as I close out this particular segment of our program, I want to take a few minutes to talk about a subject that I know, Hugh, you and I have gotten some calls on the radio show about, and that is these verses in Genesis chapter 1, specifically verses 29 and 30, which seem to imply that both humans and animals were vegetarians before the fall. Let me just read those really quick here. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it, they will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds of the air, and all the creatures that move on the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. And it was so. Now, this seems to me to be a very clear passage that even the animals were vegetarians, which would seem to be an argument against your position. How do you respond to this?
Yeah, I would respond by saying this is a passage that clearly communicates that all animal life is dependent upon green plants for their food. It doesn't necessarily state that we're directly dependent on the green plants, but that we're fundamentally dependent on the green plants for food. So I think people are reading too much into the text to discern that this implies that all animal life was vegetarian. No, it's just that all animal life is ultimately dependent on green plants for their food. And I think you put this in the context that this is a command that God is giving to our parents, Adam and Eve, about the responsibility to manage the planet for the benefit of all life, not just for their own benefit, but for the benefit of all life. In that context, it's important for God to establish that green plants are the base of the food chain. In other words, Adam and Eve need to be especially cognizant of taking care of the green plants, because if the green plants are not properly taken care of, nobody gets to eat.
So it's a general principle that's being made down. Now, would you say that that principle still applies today? Even though people obviously eat meat and various other things, that the foundation for the food chain on planet Earth still rests with the green plants?
Yes, it does. And I think going to Genesis chapter 9 really helps too, because this is when God communicates to Noah that now they can eat of meat. Mm-hmm. You know, before, they were simply partaking of vegetables, but now they can eat the meat as well. And I think you would see a different phraseology there if indeed Genesis 1, 29 and 30 were saying that all life was vegetarian. Because what you have in Genesis 9 is a comment that's specific to the human species. He's not saying, well, now these animals can eat meat as well. He's just saying, no, you humans can eat meat. And so that distinction, I think, is important. And of course, the context there is God had just shortened human lifespan from over 900 years to a max of 120. And whereas it would be dangerous to be eating meat if you were living to be 900 years, it would shorten your lifespan because of the heavy elements you would accumulate in your body. Some animal tissue has got 1,000 times the concentration, even more, of the heavy elements compared to plant material. And that's the context. Man's lifespan's now shorter, and sufficiently short enough now that eating meat no longer poses the risk that it would have if people were living to be over 900.
I think it's also interesting, too, is that the context of Genesis 9 there also, too, is later on God is forbidding very clearly the act of murder. And so there is a contrast, it seems to me, in the text between animal life and human life.
Right.
So if I understand what you're saying here about the Genesis 1 passage, it's not that it is a prohibition against eating meat. It's rather an affirmation of the importance of plant life.
It's an affirmation of the importance of green plants.
Okay.
And
as opposed to what, non-green plants?
Well, yeah, there are plants that aren't, using chlorophyll to take water vapor and carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and make sugars out of it and provide food for everything else. Although I think, Fuzz, you were telling me now that they've kind of partitioned the plant kingdom into two, where you got the green plants and the non-green plants.
Fungi.
Oh, okay.
Fungi. Yeah, fungi is an example. Fungi aren't animals, but they're not green plants either. And yet they have these roots that are fixed in the dirt. So in some cultures they're referred to as plants, but I think recently they've been classified as something distinct. We eat non-green plants. I mean, we eat mushrooms, but they're not green.
But my only other point of concern then is that I'm a little bit confused as to why the humans would be vegetarians before the flood, but not the animals.
Because of the long lifespans of humans.
Okay.
Yeah, the animals weren't living that long anyway, so it didn't matter for them.
Okay.
So as you pointed out, it's by eating a vegetarian diet, you avoid eating high levels of toxins which accumulate in animal tissue as a result of their feeding upon foods in the environment.
But you're not suggesting that this is a command to the man and the woman to only be vegetarians?
No.
But rather just an affirmation of a general principle of the importance of plant life for the sustenance of all life.
Yeah, what we're claiming is
Okay.
that Genesis 1:29 and 30 it has at its point a much more general principle than whether or not you should eat meat.
Okay.
Now, the principle being that all life, all animal life is dependent on green plants. And therefore, we humans need to be especially cognizant to make sure that the green plants are doing okay. Because if they're not, we're all in trouble.
And that would make sense in terms of Genesis 1, which lays down general principles,
Right.
that would be understood within that context.
Yeah, the implication that we were vegetarians before the flood would come from Genesis 9,
I see.
not any other passage in Genesis.
This has been a presentation of the Ministry of Reasons to Believe. If you would like to know more about other resources offered by Reasons to Believe, or have questions about issues related to science and the Christian faith, please visit our website at reasons.org or call us toll-free at 800-482-7836.